In match sentence ending questions, you have a list which has first part of several sentences, and then you have another list which has the second part of sentences or the endings of sentences. And you have to find the correct ending for the first part of the sentences that you're given. The answers of this question type are typically in the same order as the information in the passage, although in some rare cases they may be slightly out of order, but that's very rare. In pen and paper IELTS, you have to write the correct letter in your answer sheet, whereas in computer delivered IELTS, you have to click on the correct ending and drag and drop it after the first part of the question. As for how to approach this question type, you could just read one question, identify its location in the passage, figure out its answer, and then move on to the next one. However, what I usually do is I glance at all the questions first, that is the first half of the statements, look for obvious location keywords such as capitalized words, etc., identify the tentative location in the passage, then I skim through all the second half statements. To skim means to read something very quickly without going into the details of it, without trying to understand every single word of what is there. Now read the relevant part of the passage and identify the probable answer. Sometimes once you have understood the question properly and you're looking for the answer in the correct place in the passage, the answers are quite easy to figure out. In other cases, you may need to go back and forth between the passage and the given options a few times to eliminate the incorrect options and narrow down your answer to the correct one. Let's look at a couple of examples now. In these questions, I can see that in the second and third questions, there are capitalized words. So the first thing I do is locate them in the passage. Haber-Bosch process is mentioned in section D and Pierce-Flores is mentioned in section E. So in all probability, the answer to the first question should be in section C. Now I'll read the first question. Nutrients contained in the unused parts of harvested crops. And I'll skim through the options given. May improve the number of plants, may contain data 9 countries, may not be put back into soil, something about governments, something about damage to environment, and some mention of something being better at a global level. From the question, I keep nutrients, unused parts, and harvested crops in mind, and I start scanning section C of the passage. So here I see unused parts of harvested crops mentioned, and nutrients are mentioned in the sentence before that. Now that I have the tentative location, I'll read this part of the passage closely. In the wild, when plants grow, they remove nutrients from soil. But then when the plants dry and decay, these nutrients are returned directly to the soil. Humans tend not to return unused parts of harvested crops directly to the soil to enrich it. So what these two sentences mean is that in the wild or in the forest or wherever there is no human involvement, once a plant dies, its nutrients go back into soil. But where there is cultivation, where there is farming, humans do not put the unused part back into the soil, so the nutrients do not go back into the soil to enrich it. Let's look at the options in the question now. B, D, E, and F are clearly not the answer to the 18th question. The only possible answers are A and C. The answer is C because that is what is clearly mentioned in the passage. It says that the unused parts of the harvested crops, which do have certain nutrients, are usually not returned to the soil. These nutrients may improve the number and quality of plants, but that is something we can infer from the given information in the passage. It is not clearly mentioned in the passage. So the answer is C. Then we move on to the next one. Synthetic fertilizers produced with the Haber-Bosch process. So once we have done one or two of these, we are already familiar with the options. We don't need to skim through the options again. I had already searched that this process is mentioned in section D of the passage. Synthetic fertilizers are mentioned in the next sentence. Let's read the relevant part of the passage. A solution came with this process for manufacturing ammonium nitrate. Farmers have been putting this synthetic fertilizer on their fields ever since. I don't see any option in the questions that corresponds to this. So I'll continue reading the next paragraph. Chemical fertilizers can release polluting nitrous oxide into the atmosphere, and excess is often washed away with rain. Indiscriminate use of fertilizers hurts the soil, degrading the soil they are supposed to nourish. The chemical fertilizers mentioned in this paragraph are the synthetic fertilizers which are mentioned in the previous paragraph. This paragraph basically says that the synthetic fertilizers harm the environment. And different aspects of environment are mentioned which are harmed. For example, the atmosphere and the rivers. The answer therefore is E. This was slightly trickier because synthetic fertilizers and Haber-Bosch process are mentioned in one paragraph. The answer comes from the next paragraph. So it is important you understand exactly what the question is saying. And it is also important that you practice understanding the main point of a paragraph without going into the details. On your screen, you can see the relevant parts that you can quickly read and understand what is being said without going into the details of names of chemicals, etc. Knowing the question types helps you decide which questions to do first and know the right technique for each question type. Basically, it helps you find answers quickly and correctly. Most of the question types have answers in the same order as the information in the text. In case of all of these question types, our target is always to look for location key information in the questions, scan the passage for the location of the answer, then read the question carefully, understand the question, and then focus on that part of the passage where we expect the answer to be. All the different methods of solving these question types that I've recommended in this video are just that, recommendations and suggestions. Obviously, your target is to find the answer. Practice a lot. See what method works the best for you. But certainly, knowing each question type well helps you identify that method for yourself. Most importantly, you need this knowledge of different question types to figure out which question type to do first. And finally, practice is crucial. However, just do not practice one test after another without pausing to understand why you made the mistakes that you did. So do a practice test, correct it, go back and figure out why you made every single mistake, and then move on to the next one. Just doing a lot of practice tests, one after another, may not help you improve your reading score. That's it for now. Hope this helped you. All the very best.